My name is Matt Lawrence. I'm the head of defensive security here at Jumpsec, and I'm here today to talk about the future of detection and response. This is not another talk about ChatGPT, of which there are many. However, I do acknowledge the impact AI will have as a tool for detection and response, as evidenced by things like the AI coding assistant Copilot backed by Microsoft, which could increase the output of software engineers by tenfold by 2030. Generally, AI training costs are dropping in the region of 70% per year. Of course, these things will have an impact, but that's not what I'm here to talk about today. I think it's important to consider the lens at which we sort of view the future of detection and response, and I think one important lens is the cybersecurity skills gap globally, but most notably, as we're in the UK, let's consider this from a UK perspective. And according to the UK government's cybersecurity skills in the UK labour market report, high proportions of UK businesses lack staff with the technical instant response and governance skills needed to manage their cybersecurity. Within this report, it shows the data demonstrates that 697,000 businesses, that's 51% of all UK business, have a basic skills gap. That is, people who are in charge of cybersecurity in those businesses lack the confidence to carry out the kinds of basic tasks laid out in the government-endorsed cyber essential schemes. And they're not getting the support either from external cybersecurity providers to fill those gaps. The most common of these skills gaps are in configuring firewalls, storing or transferring personal data, and simply detecting and removing malware. In addition, approximately 451,000 businesses, or around a third, 33%, have more advanced skills gaps in areas such as penetration testing, forensic analysis, and security architecture. In addition to this, almost 4 in 10, or 37%, of businesses have an internal skills gap when it comes to incident response and recovery. And in addition to this, they do not have this aspect of cybersecurity resourced elsewhere either. What this all leads to is that the qualitative evidence suggests and continues to suggest that management boards lack an understanding of cybersecurity. In particular, there are potential knowledge deficits among C-suite decision makers tasked with overseeing cybersecurity. This is somewhat linked to the absence of comprehensive training pathways for individuals moving into these positions, and other challenges such as lack of time to dedicate to cybersecurity. I think something that resonates with us all. Excluding those working directly in cyber sector firms, 85% of the individuals fulfilling cyber roles in the private sector have also transitioned into their position from previous non-cybersecurity roles. So what I'm essentially getting at here is the future of detection and response is going to be intrinsically linked to how we tackle the skills gap. And there's many facets to this, but a real key and often overlooked principle is sustainability. And indeed, how key sustainability is in our ability to detect and respond effectively. And when I talk about sustainability, ultimately, I'm talking about the sustainability, of course, of our people. There are a number of factors that are essentially driving an unhealthy working environment in cybersecurity at the moment. And I say unhealthy working environment because what the data tells us is that skilled and experienced professionals are leaving the industry due to burnout and disillusionment. This is in addition to the ongoing skills gap that I've just discussed. So then arguably the most impactful is the unsustainability of many operating models, which remain heavily reliant on the manual analysis of vast numbers of security events and alerts. And of course, you have vendors and organizations who are on aggressive customer acquisition and business growth strategies, coupled with this model that is not inherently scalable, whilst also needing to maintain price competitiveness. This naturally means that organizations must extract more from their employees to maintain profitability. This does not help sustainability. In the UK, the cybersecurity workforce reportedly shrank by 65,000 roles last year. And according to a study from earlier this year, 1 in 3 current cybersecurity professionals are planning to change professions. So again, the data tells us that skilled and experienced professionals are leaving the industry due to burnout and disillusionment, and a third are thinking about it. This is not a sustainable position for the industry as a whole. And again, will feed into the future of detection and response, notably. Sustainability is key because of the reasons I've just described, but also simply because compromise is inevitable. What we can't predict is the timing and severity of a compromise. We hope, of course, that it is at a convenient time and is of low severity. But what we can confidently say is at some point in time, every organisation that is connected to the internet by some means will experience a cybersecurity breach of some level. So therefore, it's really important that we build our capabilities around this important and key assumption. Also, we must understand how cyber threats are evolving. Through ransomware, for example, attackers have landed on a model that enables them to easily monetize their attacks with or without the encryption of systems taking place. As well, in addition to just simply ransomwaring a state, theft of data, a double extortion as it's often referred to, an evolution that we've seen in these attacks over the past few years, of course, is demonstrating that the model is shifting back to exfiltration. Recent incidents, of which there are many, speak to this. But it must be understood that ransomware, as it stands today, it is really the tip of the iceberg. The criminals have almost proven the business model now in that area. And although ransomware is indeed impactful, what it does suggest is that it is somewhat trivial to compromise organizations. So I think the future, certainly in terms of cyber threats, does evolve beyond ransomware being the biggest impact. And there is a huge range of attacks that we will see in the future that we need to start preparing for now. And another key aspect here is the way cyber insurance is becoming increasingly unreliable as a method of managing the risks associated with cyber breach. We've supported many clients, indeed recently, over the past few months, who are starting to take the viewpoint that perhaps cyber insurance isn't worth it. It would be more advantageous to invest in cyber defences. That naturally feeds into the evolution of risk and how threats are dealt with. Also, and a big one for me personally as a career incident responder, is that really a lot of these incidents that you're seeing, some of the most high profile incidents, in fact, are increasingly down to, or indeed the result of, standard control gaps or the lapsing of expected controls. The old adage that the best way to fail is generally to shoot yourself in the foot. Most, if not all, incidents that we are seeing, at some stage, the root cause boils down to a simple gap in a standard or expected control. Indeed, in my previous briefing talk last year, where I shared a war story from an incident around a ransomware attack, I covered the key issues or indeed the key lessons learned from that particular incident, which I felt pretty much resonate with every incident I've been involved in my career. Just to remind you, we covered the impact of little or no network visibility, a general inability for the organisation to respond effectively, next to no preparations and too many assumptions, leading to the impact of the incident extending to many months and having a major impact on revenue. Serious technical debt, with rocky foundations, leading to bad behaviours and bad security practices throughout the particular organisation. Overall security infrastructure severely lacking, compounded by existing security infrastructure being misconfigured, also underpinned by misaligned expectations at senior level. The expectation that that infrastructure and approaches were in place and were indeed effective when they were not. Obviously amplified by a lack of meaningful checks and balances, enabling for these deficiencies to be discovered in a meaningful way, enabling proactive fixes and remediations to be built proactively. An overall little understanding of the threat and available attack paths. Although those lessons did directly apply to that incident, as I say, it is a common thread that we see through organisations that are breached, and it needn't be that way. Fundamentally, what is the issue here? Of course, we can approach this problem from many different directions. It is reasonable to assume that due to the increased visibility of incidents, most notably ransomware, a greater level of awareness will lead to fewer basic control gaps in time, or at least that's a hope of mine. I'm hoping it isn't a fool's hope. Perhaps it will lead organisations to have a greater impetus behind foundational security challenges. For example, the prevalence of flat networks at the moment, essentially enabling attackers to compromise one device and gain access to the whole organisation. As more knowledge and more understanding in time spreads through the publicity of these incidents, perhaps then organisations will begin to think slightly differently about their resilience and their foundational security, or indeed their approach to the foundations of their security. Perhaps security vendors will begin to realign their thinking on the true meaning of value and consider user sustainability to a greater degree. Because, quite simply, the cybersecurity silver bullet store is firmly out of stock at the moment, and no product exists that will solve all our problems, no matter what marketing departments want you to believe. With all of this, it also relates to the general lack of preparation, as I've somewhat already described. But that lack of preparation does bite in many ways. And one core aspect and one direction I want to sort of approach this problem is to understand the way organisations could save resources by assessing threats adequately. What I mean by that is simply because good activity on any device, network, cloud infrastructure can appear bad, and bad activity can appear good. Things malicious actors are doing can appear completely benign. So it is only through coherent investigation that the true picture emerges, and coherent investigation is underpinned by having the necessary context. That's why when we think about our detection response processes here at Jumpsec, we think in terms of enabling our people, automation to reduce mandrolic effort, and enable our people, by extension, as well, our clients, to succeed, investigate coherently, have the right preparations in place, and be ready to execute that investigation to understand the necessary context and define that true picture, to enable a coherent assessment of the threat and then the necessary response actions is absolutely key. But often organisations don't have this mindset around assessing threats and assessing potential impact to their environment, and assume perhaps that the detection or alert will provide the full picture. And unfortunately, it is only through that coherent investigation that will happen. We also see that many organisations, and this is a common thread, miss opportunities to respond effectively. Of course, response is enabled through good detection and investigation, but that lack of preparation I keep mentioning does lead organisations to miss opportunities to mitigate impact. A good analogy that I often fall into is talking about how a well-managed forest has the dead wood removed to help prevent fire, and fire breaks built in proactively to reduce the impact of a fire if and when they occur. Okay, a fire may still cause some damage, but will not be an extinction level event for the forest ecosystem. We need to have this mindset with response to cybersecurity events. Good preparation is really about understanding the opportunities that can be taken to limit impact to your business and finding ways to plan and prepare to take the opportunity at that right moment. Preparation here enables opportunity to reduce impact. As well, continuous improvement is essential. The threats we face are constantly evolving. For example, as evidenced by incidents connected to recent Fortinet vulnerabilities, which I'm sure we're all aware of here, cyber espionage threat actors are targeting technologies that do not support endpoint detection and response software solutions. Devices such as firewalls, IoT devices, hypervisors, and of course, VPN technologies. So here what this tells us is that cybersecurity never stands still. And that's why we here at Jumpsec take continuous improvement very seriously. At least 50% of my team's time is dedicated to continuous improvement activities. And for example, that includes things like detection engineering work in response to the latest threats, or research to enable us to try and stay ahead of the attackers. Think like an attacker to implement coherent defenses proactively. We then manage those changes through tactical CI or short-term reactive continuous improvement, or indeed strategic longer-term continuous improvement initiatives. The future of detection and response will be dominated by enabling people to adapt quickly and sustainably to evolving threats. In my humble opinion, what does the future of detection and response look like? I started this talk from this perspective, but the cybersecurity skills gap, evidence suggests that it will continue to bite for the next 10 years. So the future of detection and response and our approach to detection and response will be affected by this. And we need to understand, importantly, how we can make our activities more sustainable, particularly considering the way the threat will evolve. I think we will also see a reduction of basic control gaps, which will provide bandwidth for better effectiveness elsewhere. More organisation will have proactively addressed these control gaps rather than waiting for an incident to create a business case. And this will be underpinned by a new generation of skilled and experienced cybersecurity professionals finally entering the C-suite. We'll also see, and I predict this will happen over the next 5 years, generic approaches to detection becoming far less effective, and indeed a switch to more high-fidelity detections and active response that will begin to provide key advantages where it matters most. By active response, what I mean there is about limiting the impact actively, taking those opportunities and having those fire breaks in place to respond on the front foot, enabling your network, your environment, your cloud infrastructure to enter battle mode to enable you to deal with the attack whilst business as usual, to a certain extent, continues on in the background. Threats will evolve, but so will we. Continuous improvement will become increasingly important, and perhaps 80% plus, rather than 50% plus of our time, will be dedicated to it. Incidents will become more impactful over time. As I was describing earlier, threat actors are really only just getting started. Ransomware has enabled criminals to realize a financial gain objective. It's also highlighted how straightforward it can be to compromise at scale. In time, this will translate to different types of incidents with greater impacts. We mentioned the impact of the Fortinet vulnerabilities earlier, and that is an example of an evolution of the threat as they move away from endpoints and start looking at different avenues of compromise. Often, criminal actors follow cyber espionage actors in time. Also, broadly speaking here, the potential impact of cyber warfare between nations should not be overlooked here either. But we simply don't have time to dive into that topic today, but it will surely have an impact. And yes, of course, AI will play a big role, but some people do predict that all cybersecurity pros will be data scientists by 2035. I'm not completely convinced by that myself, but only time will tell. Recent years have seen a drastic change, of course, in the risk profile of many organisations with that shift broadly and unexpectedly to working from home. AI's biggest advantage will be as a tool to enable skilled people to be more effective and sustainable. But we shouldn't forget, though, that attackers will have access to it too. Should we be optimistic about the future of detection and response? I think yes. I think there are a range of issues that I've described today that we can begin to tackle more effectively, because we do understand broadly where the issues lie, and that's diagnosing the problem is often the key for positive and impactful things to happen. And I do believe that new technologies will be available and the needle will move. Thanks for listening to me today. My name is Matt Lawrence, Head of Defensive Security for Jumpsec. I'd be delighted if people want to get in touch with me to discuss these topics in more detail, but thank you very much for your time.